Well, hello there, everybody. Welcome to the Altitude Show. I'm your host, Dave Brinker. Today we have the founder of Phelps Game Calls, Jason Phelps, on the podcast, a fellow Pacific Northwester, friend of mine. He has spent his life centered around the outdoors, obviously an amazing hunter, but what most people don't know is his trajectory in entrepreneurship, which is what we spend a majority of the podcast talking about. Jason is actually an engineer and started working on his company while he was still a full-time engineer. We also talk about investing in yourself and your team, balancing life, hunting, business, how to grow a startup, and much, much more. I hope you guys enjoy this show. Also, don't forget to support our sponsors, Peaks Equipment, Go Hunt, Outdoor Class, and also a special thanks to Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation today. Make sure you go out and join them. They do a lot of amazing things. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Altitude Show. Follow us on social media. Tell a friend about the show, and enjoy today's episode. I much appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Outdoor Class is the new source of premium outdoor education from trusted and knowledgeable experts. For hunters committed to improving their skills, Outdoor Class is the only subscription-based e-learning platform that provides unlimited access to video lessons from the world's most respected experts. Learn from industry leaders like Corey Jacobson, Randy Newberg, Remy Warren, and other experts across all the topics that affect you as a hunter. Make sure to follow Outdoor Class Official on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and take your game to the next level by going to outdoorclass.com. You can use code ALTITUDE at checkout for 20% off. That is ALTITUDE at checkout for 20% off at outdoorclass.com. The Altitude Show is brought to you by Peaks Equipment, the world's leading technical, hard goods, and accessories brand for backcountry enthusiasts. From trekking poles to headlamps to best-in-class gaiters, Peaks delivers a system of products that work to achieve optimal performance in the harshest conditions. Don't suffer on your hunting adventures. Peaks enables you to thrive on the mountain when everyone else is going home. Visit peaksequipment.com and use code ALTITUDE for 10% off today. That's ALTITUDE for 10% off on peaksequipment.com.
Jason Phelps, how you doing, buddy?
Good. How have you been?
I've just been waiting all week to talk to you. I have so many questions. I have my Jason Phelps. What do you call that bugle that I bought from you?
The Easy Bugler attached to the metal tube.
It sold me at the name because anything that says easy or 101 or for dummies, I automatically buy it.
Perfect. That's our marketing's working.
No, Jason is a friend and obviously a very well-known in the hunting space, also a good human, and I appreciate you coming on, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Nowhere else I'd rather be on a Tuesday morning than talking to you.
You could be in a cubicle or something. Right?
Yeah, that's true. No, I always joke with the office that I absolutely love podcasts because it gets me off from my desk, out from behind my computer, and just get to talk with people versus feeling like you're always working. So no, I truly love talking to people versus being stuck at the grind.
Yeah, it's funny. I was telling somebody the other day how often do you get to talk to somebody for like an hour and a half without any distractions these days? No,
my favorite part of the week is podcasts.
Well, I imagine you've been doing a lot of podcasts of recently. Your company looks like it's very successful. I don't know a ton about it, but I'm kind of seeing it everywhere, and I know it's public now that you guys were acquired, correct?
Yeah. I guess not last. It would be 2 Decembers ago, on the last day of the year, 2020. Meat Eater acquired Phelps Game Calls in its entirety, and then like typical buyouts. Myself, I came on to work as a GM and continue to run the company for them.
How do you like that?
I like it a lot. There's a lot of cool stuff. There is. I'm not going to lie. There's more pressure. When venture capital is involved, they have invested money into that company with the expectation that there's going to be a return on their money. So it's a little more aggressive than, and it's good. It's good to learn that side. Whereas when I ran the company, it was more of a, that's good enough for me. Like that's a pretty good year. Let's call it, where now it's a different mentality. You're always grinding, you're always trying to hit the next, a different number, get to the next level where, where we were running it. It's like, I couldn't even have told you necessarily, where we were at or, within reason, I could give you a ballpark figure, but, oh, we're doing pretty good this year. We did this, and this. We're now, I know to the T where we're at and where we need to be and where we need to make up. And so other than that, it's a great company to work for. That's probably the most, asked question I get is, how is it working for Meat Eater? And it's truly a great company to work for. Yeah. Just a little extra pressure at times.
Yeah, for sure. Turns out when people invest money into things, they want to make money on that money. It's a novel concept.
Yep.
But as a small business owner myself, I know exactly what you're saying. It's like one of the nice things is, I keep pretty good track of my numbers, and I really, really work on trying to keep it straight, but at the same time, I don't have somebody breathing down my neck unless I want to breathe down my own neck.
Yep.
And I put a lot of pressure on myself. So what did you do before Phelps?
So before Phelps Game Calls, I went to school for civil engineering. So, did a couple years here at my local community college.
Which is where? Where do you live?
I live in PL, Washington. It's just west of the I-5 corridor in Lewis County.
Oh, you're a Westie just like I am. You're like, is it pouring down rain there right now?
No, it's actually nice today.
Surprising.
We got a little break in the weather. It's been nasty the last couple of days.
So you're actually not too far from the coast.
No, I'm about 25 minutes. I can be looking at the harbor, and then another 20 minutes and we're out at the ocean. So yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, really, really close to the coast. But yeah, it's a great place to, you live here for the summer, so for sure. But
right.
Yeah, after I finished up my 2-year degrees at Centralia College, I went up to St. Martin's, which is up in Lacey, went through civil engineering school. The whole hoopla of I worked for or under a professional engineer for the next 4 years, went and took my test and became a professional engineer. And the majority of my time, I shouldn't say the majority, all of my time was spent working for Washington State Department of Transportation. Then went to work for Washington State Department of Natural Resources, where I worked on fish passage, bridge designs, culvert designs. And then towards the end of my, public service career, before I did Phelps Game Calls full time, I was working for a company or a group within the state called the Transportation Improvement Board. And we just managed grants. So we had about $150 million to manage every year. And we basically looked at different municipalities and said, hey, this company has the best project. It has the most, the biggest improvement on safety, or it gives, the most improvement to mobility or whatever it may be. And we would issue those grants and then manage them through completion and basically pay all the bills or help pay all the bills in a nutshell. And then after the acquisition, there was the ability and the need for me to work for Phelps Game Calls full time. So I last January was my last day at the state.
Oh, okay. So I didn't know that. So you split your time. So Phelps was kind of your side hustle for up until like a year ago. Oh
yeah. It's all the way through. I would say I played around with it from 2009 to 2015. It was more of, it didn't take a lot of time. I could just kind of fit it in when I needed to. After about 2016, it became a real deal, what I consider real at that point, with employees and whatnot, but we still continued to just kind of grind it out, after work on the weekends and whatnot. The one big thing and when everybody talks about being like tied to the man or tied to the system, I have my little boy is a diabetic, and then my wife is also a type 1 diabetic, both got it at early ages. And I was just kind of like hamstrung. I couldn't leave the state. As soon as you left the state and became uninsured, I was going to be in a world of hurt. So it kind of, it had kept me tied to that state insurance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How did you manage that? I mean, how did you manage the hustle? Were you coming home at night and grinding it out, or on the weekends, or kind of like you just said, just finding a moment here and there?
It was, everybody calls it the grind, the side hustle, the grind. For me, it was such a passion of mine that I didn't feel it that way. It did take up a lot of time, and I did recognize I was using a lot of my free time, in the shop or, marketing on Facebook, whatever it may be, hunting. And I recognized that, my biggest concern was the time away from, kids and family, even though we made it kind of a holistic thing where my wife was involved, my kids were semi-involved. It wasn't so much, a grind in the sense of you had to just push through. I loved every bit of it. It was more of a, just finding the time. And I don't want to necessarily go on a tangent, but one thing I did very, very early on so that my bosses didn't judge me or look at like, hey, I've got this thing going on. I promise you guys, I will give you 100% and make sure that but there may be times where I take a business call during the middle of our business and just laid everything out, like, so that, told all my coworkers where we were at. So then you don't have, the neighbor to your cubicle, like, oh, that freaking Phelps is on the phone for 15 hours, 15 minutes here. And then, 15 hours throughout the whole week. And just kind of let everybody know and like be upfront if you feel like I'm doing it too much or we need to cut back. And so I did a pretty good job kind of multitasking why I was still sitting in my, state seat and still made sure to get all my work done and was still proud of everything I was doing at the state, but definitely making the side hustle, flourish at the same time.
What was their reaction to that?
They loved it. Like they loved for me to schedule a meeting, come in and just like lay out my life. I explained to them that, some people get caught up in their careers and this may be the most important thing to them in the world, but I just flat out told them like, my job is not the most important thing to me in the world. It pays so that I can afford to put a house over my head and enjoy these other things that I love to do. But I promise I will be a good employee. I will get my work done. And they really liked it. And it helped us like break that barrier of almost like trying to hide it or sneak around, and go out to the lobby to make this phone call or, and they might walk by you. And it just let them know exactly what I was doing, what I planned on doing. And it broke down all those barriers and just made it easier. The same, we can go on to like leave, a lot of people are like, well, how could you afford to, take this much leave when you were working for the state? And I just explained to them, like, I'm willing to work my butt off, the other 9 months out of the year, but I need some time in the fall. So you guys tell me, like, this is what I need. Now tell me what I need to do to be able to afford that, time off. And so for me, it was just like clear communication way up front and let's figure out how to make this work so that, I don't resent the job. I'm not looking to leave. And they were fully supportive of it. Great bosses. I worked for some bosses along the way that probably wouldn't have seen it that way, but towards the end when things were getting big, 2015, 16, they really kind of saw it the same way I did. And we just, formulated a plan to make it work for both of us.
Yeah. People like transparency. It's amazing. You don't get what you don't ask for. Right. And it's much worse to have an ethics complaint filed against you, once you get down the road because you're trying to hire or hide something, as opposed to just being upfront with your bosses. And from what I've seen, most of the time, they're understanding enough to at least let you. I mean, you can do whatever you want with your own free time, right? The problem is, and I hate this saying, perception is reality, because I disagree with it because it's not reality. But in the work environment, it often is. I remember one time, Jason, when I was at Sitka, which Gore owns Sitka. They have this, Gore has like a anonymous hotline on their website where people can turn in ethics complaints against you, and they don't have to say who they don't have to say who they are. Anyways, I come to find out towards the end of when I was leaving that someone had filed one of those against me, claiming that I was the marketing director at Sitka, for those that don't know, but during my time as marketing director, that I was only sponsoring podcasts that would also support my music. Like it was like a quid pro quo. But and it was like false on its face, but someone was able to file it and create meetings and potentially create a lot of headache in my life, even get me fired. Luckily my leaders knew me better and they shut it down. But when you're working for the government, I imagine you guys had pretty stringent ethics.
Yeah. There was a lot of stuff you couldn't do. There were occasional emails, from the AG, the attorney generals, what you can do, and de minimis, the word you hear in the state all the time is de minimis is allowed, but then it's never clearly defined. So you're trying to walk that tightrope of
what is it called?
Considered de minimis.
Never heard that word in my life.
So it's basically de minimis use of state time or resources on anything for personal gain. So we've filtered a lot of those emails, and that's just where it's like, I don't want to dance around the line. I just want to let you know exactly what I want to do. You guys tell me if you see any issues with it, and then this is how we're going to move forward. And the nice thing is, engineers are the driest people in the world, and it was nice that I was in a group of a bunch of professional engineers, because they're not drama filled like a lot of the other places I had worked. It's like, hey, just if you feel like I'm doing something too much, or I'm not giving enough attention, or my work's failing, just let me know. And the nice thing is there were 5 equals in my office. We were all project managers, and we had one engineering supervisor, and it was just super chill there towards the end of my state career. Which, to be honest, allowed me the ability to keep growing. Because if you were in imagine an office where I couldn't take a call, at any random time or make it work, it would have definitely hindered the growth.
Yeah, there's some cultures where you just couldn't pull it off. So what was your? My guess is when you started this, that you just did it because you like hunting elk, and you're like, I want my own call because I don't like the way these other calls sound. Is that a good assumption, or why?
Yeah.
What was your long-term vision for having your own company? Was it money? Was it, what were those things?
No. So, to be honest, and this is, if you read 99 books on how to create a successful business or a side hustle, I did it all wrong. I threw passion, which everybody talks about, way up front, and didn't really care where we ended up. I had no vision when I started. It was just, passion for calling elk, wanting to do something in that realm, and then trying to figure out what I needed to know and what I needed to learn. The engineering background was a great, foundation to build on, because I did understand how things worked, and, how to design something in a CAD program very quickly, and all of that, but really no goals. And people would, if you were to look at the company when Meat Eater first started talking to me in, late August, early September of 2020, I could not have told you within, and I know the number because I was off by this much. I was off 300% on the valuation of my company because I didn't care. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about I looked at the company and was like, we got a little bit of extra spending money, and I have to pay a little bit more taxes at the end of the year. That's truly what I was pulling out of the company. It was completely passion driven, wanting to design, calls that people like to use and people trusted, and grabbing I knew how much it cost for me to go out of state and to fill my truck up and go on a hunt. But there was a little silver lining when somebody would go, with this expensive trip and all this stuff, they would trust my calls to be, what they would use at the end. And so there was a lot of good feedback. And I liked that part of this, that I was designing something that people trusted, that they were going out, we started getting pictures of, success. And I'm like, this is what it's about for me. And is every time we design a new product, you get the good reviews, you get a few bad reviews, and you hope that you can answer or figure out why or how come. But those feel good stories, people with good experiences using our products was really what was kind of driving it.
So how do you deal with that criticism? I've seen some lately of your guys' turkey call, which I'm sure you're aware of, and it's coming from a couple specific individuals, but even still, you got to deal with that. And you're this is your baby. How does that make you feel?
It sucks. And I have a bad personality, and I shouldn't say this in case you're listening to your podcast, because I don't want to let them ever know they get to me. But I have a personality that I want everybody to like me.
Right.
I should be able to talk to you. And so it does suck. Mm-hmm. But I've got some rebuttals, and if I was to talk this through, the idea was that it's not truly a custom call, and that why do we feel that we can charge that much for it, was the major complaint.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I mean, I can answer that. It was an extremely expensive project. The box that we ship the call in costs more than our normal pot calls cost to make. So and then you look at how we calculate. I didn't do anything different in the calculation. We just looked at our normal. Here's what this project cost. Here's what we typically mark up our calls, and it just ends up in a wild spot. And it's unfortunate. And then the other thing is, like, I don't spend all day going around on, Lamborghini and Ferrari posts saying your guys' damn cars cost too much. I'm never going to buy them. Why would I buy this when there's an Audi R8 for half the price and it's got the same horsepower, right? I just don't go talk about it. I just keep scrolling or I move on. I don't take the, and I guess, and I hate the whole, like, man, you must be in a bad place to, just sit and complain. Like, I feel everybody has the right to complain. And if I don't have a good response on why we're trying to sell a turkey call for $300, then maybe I should reevaluate it. So it's a little bit frustrating, but it's also a good, check for me. Like, hey, are you guys way out in left field? Are these things way overpriced? So I take it with a grain of salt. I don't like it, but it's just part of the business. I feel up until the line one call, I hadn't really had any major, like, issues, with stuff like this. So this was kind of like the first more mainstream issue. And like I said, if you don't like it, then don't buy it. We've got field grade calls in our lineup for, anywhere from $69.99.
That's the key that a lot of people forget about in every industry. Yeah. It's like, this is a free market. You're welcome to buy whatever call you want. So go ahead. We dealt with that all the time. I remember having conversations with when this would have been in like 2008, right when Sitka was just getting rocking and rolling, and we were building a jacket that was going to retail at $650, and at the time, like, you could go buy all of your hunting clothing, like every layer, for less than that. This was just one jacket. On the mountaineering side at the time, they existed, but hunters had never heard of anything like that. So when we'd go to dealers, I remember these people, like, just basically tell you to F off, right? There's no way you guys are going to sell a $600 jacket. I can't tell you how many times I heard that. And then we sold all of them. And the lesson for me was, opinions are you can find as many opinions as you want. Ultimately, it comes down to what's your guys' strategy, what's your guys' philosophy, and it's a free market. So you guys can put something out. Doesn't mean this person needs to buy it. But at the same time, it's a funky balance, Jason. I'm sure you're learning it under the fire here, is sometimes you do need to listen, right? And or at least reflect. Be like, okay, I'm just going to check myself here. No, I still believe in my math. I still believe in my vision. I'm good. If this guy doesn't like it, I don't really care. There's lots of choices to make, but yeah, when you're early in your company, I imagine you didn't have to deal with that a lot, because it's just a passion. Like, most of the people that are, it's when you hit the mainstream, dude. And this happens in music, it happens in business, any industry. It doesn't matter. If you're a musician, I see this a lot. Like, and you're like super cool, like how old are you, Jason? 40 something?
38.
38. Do you remember Sublime?
Yep.
Okay. So I remember when my buddy bought a Sublime CD, and he had it in his truck, and he's like, dude, you need to listen to this. And it was awesome, right? And then all of a sudden, Sublime, like, over the course of like a year, kind of went mainstream. And that same buddy's like, yeah, they suck. It's like, they should have never went mainstream, charging this much for a ticket and da-da-da. It's like, well, that's called capitalism. And most musicians kind of want to go mainstream, even if they act like they don't want to, because that's actually when they start making money. Until then they're living out of van. Yeah, exactly. So, did you have a family that was entrepreneurial, or, like, most of the time engineers aren't real creative? I shouldn't say that. That was really mean. I didn't mean that.
No. You're true. Like, engineers go to school. We're trained to go work for either the state, or you go, work for a private, consulting firm, and you work there until you're 65. You've made a pretty good living, and you retire.
They're very, correct me if I'm wrong, engineers that I know are very good at executing a vision. They're like very detail oriented and intelligent, but I don't oftentimes see them as like soup. Well, that's not true. I mean, damn, the richest man in the world is Elon Musk, and I think he's an engineer. So maybe my theory is totally false. But anyways, you must have had some sort of
cultivation of this entrepreneurial spirit within you.
Yeah, and a lot of it, whether it's entrepreneur or whether it's just, I have a very obsessive compulsive like personality. If I decide that I like something or I'm interested in learning more about it, I'm in 110%. And I'm going, same thing before I did, the game calls, I was trying to build the most high performance, exhaust systems and motors and stuff for, four-wheelers and motorcycles at the time. It was just my passion. Like if I was going to do it, I wanted to be the best. Very competitive family, grew up playing, football, basketball, baseball, which leads into my personality. Very competitive, very, bought into what I'm doing, and then, and so I wouldn't say the entrepreneur came from like me just wanting to make a business and like, have a good retirement. Like that's not where it came from. It was more of a, hey, I love calling elk. I want to design something that's better than what's out there. And I'm over the top obsessed with it. Looking back, my dads and uncles have always ran like side hustles. They just didn't do it in a way where there was like more gain at the end. It was like, hey, let's pick up a roofing job here. Let's go, put this foundation in, for somebody across town. They were kind of the weekend construction workers and did really well at that. They always had extra spending cash and whatnot, but there was no scalability to it, right? It was just my dad and his brothers doing a roof job here or there. But I was able to watch that growing up. Like, hey, if you don't make enough money at your normal job, like go do this if that's what's important to you. Yeah, so I got to watch that, but yeah, nobody really in the family has much of like a business ownership. Everybody was just kind of your typical let's go work somewhere for 40 years and retire sort of a mentality.
Has it shocked you how much value you can create in a short amount of time? For like, I have to imagine when your company was getting acquired, you're like, dude, this is crazy. This was like literally a hobby, and here I am 7 years later, and someone wants to give me money for this. It's got to be a weird feeling.
It is. And this is like how little of business sense I had. Like fairly smart guy. Like I can read something and figure it out, or, especially with numbers and interest and, EBITDA and all that stuff that makes sense. But I had never went through the process. So I knew what we were selling a year, and I knew that number was getting bigger and bigger, but it was crazy when we went through this process. And like, yeah, I mean, and like I said, I wouldn't consider, we weren't doing anything cool until 2015, 2016. We were starting to make a little bit of an impact, but it was really kind of, I would say non-mainstream impact at that point. We were just doing everything we could to get some people, using our stuff. So, it's, go ahead.
I was going to say, and I have a lot of friends that are engineers, so I'm not bashing engineers, but most of the time they're introverted. Like you seem introverted. Like it probably exhausts you to go to a show and talk to 500 people, right? So I'm curious how you learn to. I mean, you got to learn how to manage employees, and managing employees, no matter who you hire, comes with drama, and introverts hate drama. It drains them.
Oh. Yeah, I'm completely introverted. Like I can get to a show, talk to people for a couple of days, and I need like a week vacation after. I think I can manage because it's hunting stories and something that I like, and I can kind of push through. But yeah, extremely introverted. I am the worst manager of a company that you could ever hire. Like I do the things that I'm good at, the design. I can make some marketing decisions. I'm fairly decent at marketing and just having like empathy and knowing what the customers probably want to hear and see. I'm good at that stuff. But when it comes to managing employees, like there's a reason that I hired a business manager. Like I don't want to deal. I wanted a break between me and the whole entire rest of the company. Like it's not good. I don't like dilemmas. I don't like dramas. I don't like, uncomfortable situations. And so I tend to just kind of run from those.
Well, you can't now. You're leading the company. So what do you do?
I do. I just tell the business manager that's
that 5% manager.
Yeah, that 5% other at the like that's for you to deal with the stuff I don't want to deal with.
Well, everybody's got to have their corners, man. And usually, it sounds like products your passion. So you focus on the product, and then ultimately, if you build great product, your business grows.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been waiting to ask somebody this, and I hate even giving away my idea on the podcast, but this is my podcast. I can say whatever I want. Has anybody ever fooled with like actually analyzing the musical notes that elk say. Like, I'm a musician, and I know that the high note on a bugle is an E flat. It's like a high E flat. Has anybody ever thought about like actually breaking it up and having like you can use like a guitar tuner and actually see if you're hitting the right notes, because it is music.
So we've never went into like the musical notes. We have measured frequency, and I've been involved in a few patents where we know like where typical bugle tubes hit. We've analyzed like specific elk bugling, what I thought to my ear was a high note versus like what our new aluminum bugle tube. So we've played with it on that, but we've never played with it as far as like musical like notes and instruments or anything.
Are those patents that you were involved in, are those out?
The one is on the aluminum bugle tube. So where
it is.
Yeah. So we use a program called SolidWorks that actually does like vibration frequency and will give us.
Well, I mean, that's basically what music. I mean, a note is just vibration.
Yeah. And so we can get out of the program SolidWorks like what a resonant frequency would be. We've got all the data of a 35-year-old man that's 6'2" has a lung capacity of this, and if we're trying to hit a note of this, like this tube is capable of a note of 2,500 hertz, where like plastic tubes, the highest we can reach is 1,900 by the same like vibration theory, and so we do play with that a little bit.
Oh, okay, I didn't know this this is what I've been wondering, why no one has ever gotten to the science of it all.
Yeah, I mean, I'm maybe a little reluctant so that everybody else maybe goes and does the same thing. But that's why, like our aluminum bugle tube just hits a different ear piercing note. It has the capability or the ability, based on if the user can get there or not, that tube hits a certain frequency.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's real world too. Like you can do whatever you want inside of a program, and until you go test it in the real world and
right.
like confirm that it can do that, a lot of it's just, a bunch of engineering stuff on your computer. So that's where I love to be able to design something, be able to get some sort of rapid prototype or a 3D printed model, and then just test it. And then, see if what I thought or what the computer told me we were going to get is what we actually got.
How did you, you're working for the state, you're running your company, and you're married, and you have how many kids?
Two kids. Yep.
How did you manage being a dad, man?
So I don't want to, I use the word forced. I don't want to say I forced myself, but I signed up to coach every sport that my kids were involved in, which is all of them. And so,
wow.
I was there coaching, and then as I mentioned, I learned over time that I probably wasn't giving my kids enough of my time. So I'm like, man, well, coaching isn't necessarily great because all I ever do is yell at my kids and expect more out of them and tell them what they're doing wrong.
That's pretty much what I do too. So
and how to fix this. And so we just set aside time. Like, hey, if my kids come and tell me that we want to play a board game, like, yeah, I might be busy trying to make a social post or figure out something like, hey, I might not be able to play for the next 3 hours, but I'll at least give them, time, for that game or whatever it may be. And that's where I didn't like go lock myself in my shop for the most part. There were some days that I spent a lot of days, turning barrels, but I tried to, at least be around my kids while I was on my laptop or while I was on my phone. So I could still be around or involved, but not necessarily like fully engaged. And then, like I say, sports was the majority of our life for the last 6 years. And so I was always involved, whether it was, hunters, basketball, baseball, being the coach for all of that. Just made sure that I was giving my kids, as much time as I felt they needed. My wife, she was involved from about 2015 on. So, it's not the greatest way to spend time with your wife is through work and through business, but we were always around each other.
Oh, so is she still involved?
Yeah, she's the cog that makes this whole thing turn still. As I've kind of separated from, the day-to-day operations and then the business managers, looking at sales and managing the team. Like Sandy is kind of the catch-all. She's, entering in wholesale orders. She was the wholesale order like manager up until now. So she she's like our inventory checker, making sure that, you know, we're staying on pace to meet our forecast. And yeah, so Sandy's fully involved, you know, in the company, and has been for the last 6 years now, I think.
Have you guys navigated that pretty well? That's pretty tough.
Yeah. As of now, like with the whole meat eater deal and my design like becoming more of a priority in my day to day, there's a little bit of frustration because I was so involved and I had answers for everything in the past, where now I'm like, I don't know, you're gonna have to figure it out, you know, which is never a great answer, but that's kind of where we got to. Like, I haven't been involved with this for the last 6 months. Like, you tell me what we're gonna do. But it's good. She's a superstar. Like I try to tell her, you know, if I had to hire, you know, start from scratch and hire somebody to run this company, like, you'd be my first pick. You know, it's like, she's that important to the company. Yeah, she does a good job. And yeah, some days she gets a lot more frustrated than I do with the growth, because, you know, for me, the growth isn't necessarily as impactful in my day to day, because I'm just designing new stuff. And then for me, it's just like, hey, whether I'm going to order 5,000 of this new call or 10,000, like versus when 10,000 come in, like, she has to figure out how we're going to package, you know, the extra 5,000 and get it in the schedule and get it out on time. So like I say, she's a superstar, but yeah, still works here. Yeah. And it seems like it. She likes the responsibility, but then hates it at the same time. Like, it wears on her, but then she also doesn't want anybody.
Do you guys have to separate it? You know, in the evening, it's like, okay, let's not talk about work anymore, because that can be really hard already with just people that you work with, like turning your phone off, like being able to spend time with your kids. Dude, if you're coaching all those sports, I don't even know how it wears me out watching dads like you coaching sports. I'm like, I struggle with a little fatigue, especially that time of night. And I'm like, dude, I don't know that I got it in me to manage these kids playing soccer. I mean, I want to coach golf because I played golf growing up, and I'm looking forward to doing that. But like coaching baseball and stuff, I don't know that I'm cut out for it, Jason.
No, I loved it. I loved sports growing up. It was a huge part of my life. And so I feel like I'm giving back to all the kids. But yeah, it's just, I always, and this sounds super cliche, and I hate saying it, but I'm going to say it, like, I want to be like, wiser. I don't even know how that saying goes. I want to be like more wise and listen to the old people that have told me this, but I don't want to be on my deathbed, like getting ready to kick the bucket and like have that regret of, man, I wish I would have did more. Like, I can almost guarantee, unless I'm just nuts when I'm dying, like, I'm not going to have that regret that, you know, I didn't live a pretty full life and do more. Which is cool. Like I say, I don't know if I'm not necessarily wise before my years, but it's just something I've heard old people talk about, or, you know, the memes that are all over. And it's like, well, if that is a thing and people do think about that, then I'm setting myself up pretty good to, like, you spend a lot of time with your kids. You were involved with all your kids. You know, you took a shot at entrepreneurship. You did all of this stuff, and hopefully, you know, have a good career and a good life you can hang your hat on. It is important to me.
Is hunting as fun as it was before you were involved in the industry?
Yeah. I mean, I still have a kick, like, anytime I'm out there. This might be a little more scripted. Like right now I'm working on an elk project, and they're like, oh, the budget says you can hunt for 7 days. I'm like, BS. I want to hunt for 10 days. Like, this is elk hunting. This isn't as easy as like a duck hunt or a deer hunt or something. Like, this is still elk hunting. So, you know, there's stuff like that where it's like a little bit frustrating. Like, I don't want to hunt just, you know, 2 days less because of a budget or because of this. But when I'm out there, whether I'm out there for a 3-day hunt, 7, 10, whatever it is, like, I'm still loving. I just love being outdoors. I love elk hunting. Yeah, I love any kind of hunting. And so I would say the hunting itself, I'm still just as excited, no matter where I'm at, who I'm with. It is a little different, where, you know, coming up as the company grew, and I got to hunt with my buddies a lot more. And now there's a lot more of like, hey, you're going with this guy here, and then we're going to go do this project over here, which, you know, someday I want to I think people would respect it too. Like, hey, I'm just going to go back and hunt with my buddies, whether you want to film it or not. Like, one of these years, I just want to go, you know, I want to go just do what I want to do with who I want to do it with.
Yeah.
And,
This industry, that was what my next question is. Did you ever miss just not hunting with a camera?
I do. Last year, deer season, finally, you meat eaters a little more business focused, where they're like, hey, if you don't have deer calls right now to sell, like, we're not paying for a camera guy to go. And so I'm like, thank God. Like, I got to mule deer hunt with my family, got to mule deer hunt on my kid's first deer, and didn't have a camera besides my cell phone in my pocket. So it's nice. I still love hunting in front of a camera, and hopefully, providing educational pieces or tips and tactics that will help people be successful. I think, as you mentioned earlier, I'm an engineer, so I know, like, my entertainment value isn't as high as some others. I'm out there hopefully providing tips and tactics, because, I need guys like Dirk and stuff to be the entertainment. I'm just not going to, like, carry a good, entertaining hunting show by myself. So, no, but I miss the old, hunting with the old group of guys, my buddies, and some of the hunts we got to do, versus now it's a little bit more, structured and dates, and we're going with this guy and that guy, but
yeah,
still love it.
Of course. Yeah. And it's a first world problem. There's no question about that. Right.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people listening might be like, oh, cry me a river, cry me a river, buddy. But the truth of the matter is like, when I left Sitka, and I'm still involved with the industry, but not from a full-time perspective necessarily. So I can pretty much hunt with who I want. And I hunt a lot with my dad and my brother and my buddies. I don't do many what I call popularity contest hunts, where I have to, like, associate myself with someone that's famous to, like, build my following anymore. You know what I mean? It's like, I really do value, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, making a living in the industry, there's nothing wrong with that. And you got to do those things. But there's also nothing wrong with just saying, I don't want a fucking camera. I want to go hunting with my buddy and shoot a couple raghorns and laugh and drink a beer and not worry about any of that crap. I don't want to capture anything. I just want to live it.
Yep. No, there's days, that or ideas or projects where it's, like, I'd much rather be here at this time or that. But
right.
I think we'll get there. This is kind of, hopefully, I'm imagining this is like that first big bump into meat eater content. And I've really enjoyed hunting with Steve and Giannis and getting to do some of this stuff. But there's, even my buddies, I come from a ruthless group of friends. Like, our core group is just, and I get crap all the time. Like, oh, big timer, you ever going to come hunt with us again? Or you're too cool for, and so I live it up, and we joke about it, but no, there's deep down why I'm flipping them crap back. Like, I do want to go hunt with the guys again, and we'll make it happen soon, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. They like to give you crap for that. You big timer.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like, hey, is Steve going to let you hunt with us this year, or is it, but it's all good.
What's it like getting to know someone like Steve? Steve to me, I don't know him at all, really. I've met him a couple times, but that's about it. But he seems like a inspiring person to be around in terms of just, I mean, I know he's a hunter and all these things, and he's got all the TV show and the podcast and all that, but even beyond that, he seems like a really intelligent person, and probably someone that you could learn a thing or two from, right?
Yeah. I mean, he is, who everybody thinks is super smart. I could bring up some random point on the, as we're trying to, do the midday nap or find some shade, we just, stir up a conversation, and something that I thought I was the expert in, whether it was elk or this or that. And the guy starts rattling off, more facts than I know. And you're like, how do you remember all this shit? He just, but then, super genuine guy too. Like, we were in a restaurant there after our elk hunt in New Mexico, and, the poor guy can't really even go out in the public real well,
right.
Without, and, but he takes time, to take pictures with people, and just a good, genuine guy. Quick conversation starter. When, these kids want to take pictures, he'll ask a couple questions about, hey, you get to hunt yet? Or, so just a good guy. He reminds me a lot of my buddies, always flipping crap, or if you did something a couple of days ago, like, not afraid to bring it back up a couple of days forward, just to flip more shit on you. And, no, I really enjoy hunting with him, and the guy's good. Like, I always say when somebody's filming a hunt, like, they can make themselves or they can edit themselves into, being as good or is smart and whatever as they want. But, like, in real life, behind the scenes, like, the guy's a good hunter, good hiker, good knowledge of all the gear, good when to sit, everything that we were working together on the elk hunt, like just good, solid hunter.
Yeah. Have you found as time's gone on that you find, do you have any passion for anything else? Are you pretty like all hunting? Like you love the outdoors, obviously, but do you have any other hobbies in the outdoors?
So as I made a little mention earlier, like before I got full blown into the calls, I was building performance motors and stuff
that's right. So you're a motorcycle guy.
So now with the onset of the side by sides, we're fairly close to the Oregon dunes, and so that's our other fun time. Is I usually try to spend a couple weeks out of the summer down there.
Do you have a dune buggy or something?
Yeah, we've got two Can-Ams, two of the 4-seaters, and then I've got the old school Banshee that's all fixed up.
Yeah,
and I've got a Honda 450. My kid rides a 400EX. My wife rides a YFZ 450. So we're pretty loaded up on the sand toys.
Oh, wow.
We go down with a big group. There's a big group of us here that are still going down, and so that's what I just love to, because even me and my wife argue over this all the time, like whether my hunting trips are vacations or not. Like I tell her it's work, she tells me it's vacations, but I don't ever get this, like, it's not a beach vacation where you sit down and drink Mai Tais and stare at the water, where like the dunes are a little bit more of that vacation for me, where I can just unwind, not check my emails, and just relax and have a good time.
Yeah. Have you guys ever had any accidents down there?
I've been in some accidents, nothing major though. Riding a little bit above your head or whatnot. I've rolled some stuff and, some high speed rollovers. I've had some buddies get hurt fairly bad, fractured ribs and
seems like everybody that I know that rides in the dunes either knows somebody or had it happen themselves where they have a broken bone or a bad, unfortunately, because it's so fun. I used to have a Banshee. That's why I laughed when you said that.
Yep.
I had a Banshee. It was just a stock Banshee, but it was plenty fast for me.
Yep.
And, it's so much fun just to unload that thing out on the dunes, and just for someone who's never experienced that feeling, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Sand flying, you going like 70 miles an hour or whatever. Isn't that how fast Banshees? A stock Banshee can go like 70, can it?
Yeah, it just depends on your gearing, but yeah, you can go you can make the thing go 90 if you want. I'm all about how fast you can get going 70, like just yanking your arms out of it. I just, like I say, I'm obsessive compulsive about everything. So everything I got goes fast. Like I don't want the guy next to me to be able to go faster than me. So all my stuff's, souped up and fast, but we have a great time, but I'm like bipolar down there. I'm the most conservative guy, while our kids are around, like, I'm trying to ride around, make sure nobody ever hits the kids. But then like when we get out to like wide open areas, I'm probably the stupidest guy on the sand when I know that like I can't hurt anybody else. But no, that's our side hobby. The kids love the beach, so it's just we can do a little bit of that. We can do a little bit of riding. Mm-hmm. But yeah,
but your year probably now is getting pretty rounded out. My wife always calls hunting season. It used to be September, and then it turned into September, October, and then it just creeped into every month of the year. And I imagine you're probably in the same place. You don't have as much time for other hobbies.
Yeah, not as much. It's literally hunting, and then a little bit of sand.
What are you seeing? You spent a lot of time at the shows this year. Are you seeing growth? I know your company's growing, but like now that I'm out of the industry full time, I'm just wondering: are there more hunters coming in? Is this was the hipster hunting movement that happened here 5, 6, 8 years ago, where all of a sudden there was like plane loads of people landing upon Bozeman every day that became hunters, and everywhere else? Is that still going on? Are you guys still seeing that, or is hunting under a bunch of threat right now and kind of stagnant?
We're, in my opinion, I haven't paid too much attention to the whatever you called it, the hippie movement, or
no. And I've nothing against these people, by the way, but I'm just saying, like field to table. Like I think Ranella's done a good thing for hunting in bringing two very divisive cultures kind of together, and like he's on Netflix killing animals. Like that's crazy. Like when you turn on Netflix and it's like the top thing on Netflix that cancels like they were going to cancel Dave Chappelle's comedy routine, but I can watch Ranella, which is fantastic, kill an elk with an arrow and a broadhead on Netflix.
So I'm. It's a good thing. I wasn't meaning that in
No, no,
demeaning.
no. I was trying to get around to, like, I haven't paid as much attention to that movement. The big thing we've been paying attention to is the COVID spike and the COVID effect on the hunting industry, which was real. And I think everybody has felt a positive impact, whether it's everything from game calls to ammunition to gun sales. I think the hunting industry over the last 2 years is way up as people were looking for things to do outside to go. I think it scares a lot of people. Like, do I have the ability to go get my own food if it ever got to that place? Like there was a big movement. Now we follow right up on that COVID high with like inflation issues. Like we're in a weird spot. Like I'm curious to see how the COVID bubble and the COVID high kind of carries through versus you're running into what some are saying is, the highest inflation in the last 40 years. So why I try to pay attention to that stuff. I don't know. Judging from the two shows I was just at, the industry's still up. Like the need, the want, the spend coming from the customers is still at its all-time highest.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, I think the value of the outdoors is just only going up, no matter what the activity is. I have a land business. It's one of my companies, and we deal in rural properties, big ranches, timberland, whatever it might be, farms, and it's just amazing to see how many ears have perked up. It's like, oh, it's a really safe investment to own some property, but also I love just recreating. I like being outside, and COVID just made us all realize, like, it sucks being inside. We're not meant to be like that, know. And so I think I do think there was obviously there was a spike, and it may be a bubble, but I can't foresee the field to table movement going away, because more and more people are more conscious than ever about where their food's coming from. Also, the popularity of like things like the carnivore diet and things like that. Meat isn't such the devil anymore as it was maybe a couple years ago. But also just the value of getting outside and making sure that we're so blessed in the United States to have such access to so much beautiful country. And I think the more we watch the world news, we realize, like, there's bombs dropping on kids in Ukraine right now.
Yeah.
And it's awful. And we're very lucky to have what we have. So how do we protect it? And I think more and more people are coming together, from even anti-hunters wanting to protect public lands and access and all these things. So I tend to agree with your sentiment. But like, where do you see yourself 20 years from now? Are you still running a company?
I hope so. That's my ultimate goal, and some of my like long-term vision now for the company was to hopefully, have it up there with the biggest game call companies in the world, whether it's Primos or whether it's whatever it may be. Like that's my long-term goal for the company, is to keep growing it. 20 years. Hopefully I'm getting ready to retire by then, but as long as everything keeps going well and the company needs me and I'm enjoying working there, like I would just assume still be in the seat. We'll see how time treats me and how it all works out. But no desire to, I kind of did my little there's definitely little sparks that still go off in my head, like, man, it'd be cool to go design this or go chase that, or there's I have that. I work better when there's a carrot dangling in front of my head versus now, the carrot's also known as pride. Like, I'm just not going to let the company with my name on it fail. But there's not a lot of, there's just not a lot of, reason to grind it out like I did. It's more, working for the man now. You're just putting in your time, making sure the company is running well. But yeah, I don't foresee myself going anywhere as long as, everything keeps going good.
Yeah. What's your advice for those that are listening out there that either have a side hustle, want to have a side hustle, or maybe even don't even know what their side hustle would be, but they have the, full-time job, and they're like, man, that would be cool to start a whatever, underwater basket weaving. Can you think of your couple like major learnings that you could pass on to other people?
Yeah. And it kind of stems off of the same conversation we had earlier. Like, number one, it's going to help if you're passionate about it. And I get this question quite a bit, like, hey, I just want to hunt more, or hey, I want to do this, or I want to do that. And so I've had a lot of time to think about it. And number one is like, what's your goal out of this? Do you just want to hunt an extra 2 or 3 weeks out of the year? Do you want to be able to afford better tags for the weeks? Like, what's your goal? Or do you truly want to like live your life in the hunting industry? Because there's a lot of different ways to do it. I always tell the story of, like, hey, if you want to hunt a lot and you like go be a dentist or a doctor, right? They've got more money than I do, and they've got the ability to hunt, or go do this or that. Like, what is your goal? And until you want to, live and work and breathe inside the hunting industry, if that's your goal, then you're going to have to like, figure out how to do that. Whether it's go work for a company, do you have the ability to come up with something new and an idea and a marketing background to get it all going? Or if that isn't your goal and you just want to hunt more, like, can you do a couple side projects a year that gives you that extra money? And I think the hard part is, I would say 95% of the people that come to me wanting, to come up or end up at some goal doesn't really know what that goal is, or is unclear about it. A lot of people, I just need, if you could sponsor me, or if I could do, and it's just like, you just need to come up with what you really want. And then, like I had mentioned the example of my dad's and uncles earlier, like roofing houses. Like, if I only needed to go on a couple more hunting trips a year and that was my goal now, like, I'll just learn how to roof a house, pick up 3 or 4 roofs throughout the summer, and I would have all the money extra I would need to go on, a couple extra hunts. So, yeah, but if you've got an idea and you've got a goal, and it requires you to start a company or work for somebody, like, passion's going to be number one. Like, money, there are a million hurdles and roadblocks that are coming in front of you. And for me, at least, like, I needed passion to like help me lift over all of those. Cause there are times where, there's a financial decision coming up and you're like, man, on the books, it makes a lot of sense to like back out of this, or this is like a good time to cut ties or go a different direction. And it's like, no, I believe in this enough. I'm going to continue on. I'm going to have to write a check that gets me down to, to where the account's pretty dry, or I'm going to have to borrow from me personally, or whatever it might be. So I used a lot of, what I would consider passion to get through financial decisions, marketing decisions, lack of sales situations. I'm just like, man, this is what I want to do. I feel like this is right. I feel like I can make an impact. And so I just kept on pursuing, the next milestone based on my passion.
Did you have to raise money to start Phelps?
I didn't. It's a sad story, but I'll tell it. And this is like the humble beginnings. I was the guy that, my hunting boots, any new hunting gear I needed to come out of like the tax returns, right? That's how I could afford hunting boots. And, I had a gun, I had this, but I was the guy just trying to hunt my own state, do what I could do, because that's what I knew. I didn't borrow any money, but I did trade my first 2 sets of elk horns for a lathe. So that's how I like literally started with the lathe.
That's great.
My very first muzzleloader bull, and then a bull I had killed a couple years later. He wanted to make, it was another call maker, and he wanted to make calls out of using the horn as the call body. And so I was able to trade him 2 sets of elk horns for a lathe, and started with like the wood calls. But yeah, I did borrow a little bit of money from my mom and dad, which was just like, I learned early on that if you bought more, you got cheaper pricing, and it was more of a I need to borrow a little bit more so I can get my price knocked down, and I'll pay you guys back in a week, sort of a deal. But yeah, never borrowed like money from the bank. Always cash flowed the entire business and kept it in the black at all times. Never went in debt.
Wow. Was there any moments where you're like, holy crap, like we're very close to the line of going into the red?
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And if so, like, I'm fascinated with, because I know you were stressed out. Like, even if you're doing what you're doing and you're in the black, but you're still scared shitless, because that's kind of entrepreneurship. Like, you're laying awake at night being like, were you like, what the hell am I doing? Like, what? And God, I could go buy a call and not have the stress, right?
Yeah. No, there were days like I would, and this is how podunk we were to start. Like, all of my my bins were in my own personal closet. Like, hey, we need to make some money. I've got these parts on hand. Like, that's a call I'm making tomorrow and throwing on Facebook to sell, because that's got to get me, like, I've got to figure out how to pay for this next batch of wood or parts. And like I say, it was nip and tuck for a while, just trying to get to the next project. And then the day where I had saved up enough where I could, buy a diaphragm press and move from wood turned barrels and, our external cow calls into the diaphragm. Cause I knew that needed to be our next stage into, hey, we got to, I was buying, unmarked fat bats from a wiffle ball bat company, modifying them in my shop. Like that was our bugle tube. That's what we could afford. And that's what we could make happen. And then, slowly over time, all right, we designed our own bugle tube. It was kind of a blessing in disguise when Fat Bat said, hey, our mold's no good anymore. You're going to have to go somewhere else. And I'm like, well, it's time to just design our own tube and move forward. The same with the, any new diaphragm designs. Like you can design it, but then like, it was one of the better things that happened. Like, because I don't know if I would have taken that risk if I hadn't have been just like hit in the face, like, hey, you're a call company and you no longer even have a bugle tube. Like you better figure out something really quick. And yeah, it was just every little progression. You went from, being scared to put $100 purchase order in for call parts at one time to, spending, 100 times that on a tool to make your own bugle tube. And so like everything, and I'm very, very conservative financially, like it hurt a lot, like making those decisions, like, well, how do you, like, yeah, you've got more money in the account now, but you're still going back to the same zero every time. Like you're getting really close again. And then you're just hoping that, the new tube sells well. And then, hey, it's time to pay for the amp diaphragm tooling. Well, that's a big number. And so you run the account back down. And some of that is why we did grow so slow in the beginning, because I didn't want to borrow money. I wanted to build it slow. And we almost had to make every decision right, because if I would have like just completely bonked it on any of these designs or ideas, we would have been done, because every time I had to make a big decision, we'd run back to zero, or close to zero.
You didn't even pull out a credit card on Phelps?
Nope. It was 100% cash flowed from start to finish. Like I didn't want to go backwards ever.
Wow. So that same guy that's listening to this, so he's got passion. We got passion. What else do we need to do what you did? That's why I asked about money, because there's a couple excuses that you'll get. Fear, right? What if I fail? And then, well, I can't afford it. I want to make, I don't know, insulated coffee mugs. Wouldn't recommend it. Yeti's pretty good. But I want to make these, but gosh, to start, I need like $5,000 to buy the inventory. And then I'm going to need to pay someone to help me, whatever, blah, 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 blah. I need $10,000 to start it. Most people with a full-time job, like you said, man, I remember buying hunting licenses with my tax return. Like that tax return back in those days, I'm with you. Like that, if you got like $2,000 back in your tax return, you're like, dude, I am rich. Let's go to like Hawaii. Let's, fly for, you know, you have the, it's actually pretty funny how much that meant, but it's true. So how did you deal with that? I mean, cause you have to start somewhere. You can't cash flow it from the beginning necessarily, cause you have to have cash to put out at the beginning.
Yep. Yeah. And that's where, and maybe my advice is more geared towards, low startup type businesses. I'd read a couple articles on, find something you're passionate about, but then have a low startup cost. So working on motors, like really was, as long as I had a toolbox with the right tools in it, I could do that. Like it was labor and it was a little bit of welding and whatnot. So the same thing when I moved into building out calls, the idea is I would start with wood bodied external cow calls. Well, being from a logging town, being pretty good with woodworking equipment, like I can buy a lathe, I've got the chop saw, I've got a drill press. So my barrier to entry as far as financial like requirements were very, very low. So your example of starting a $10,000, coffee mug company like that, you might have to come up with a different approach. You may have to go look for, I've learned a lot of this, may have to go look for an investor, somebody that you're willing to, give you a loan, or maybe you have good enough credit you can actually go to the bank and, give yourself a loan, or maybe you can borrow against your house. Like I'm not a financial advisor by any means, but there are methods to but why I would never tell anybody not to do it, I'd also strongly advise, I've just looked at lots of numbers, like entrepreneurship's like 15% success rate. So like I would spend more time up front, like figuring out how this is going to work and why it's going to work before you go borrow $10,000 against your house or whatever it may be. Like have a good game plan. Where I mentioned I had a pretty low startup cost, so I didn't plan things out very well. I just kind of seen where it took me. But yeah, if you're going to start, like have a good plan, know what you need, know what, contingencies you need, so that it doesn't fall on its face, 2 months in. Like have a long-term, 1 year planned out, like where you're going to sell your first product, how you're going to sell it, what your profits are going to be, how you replace, how you grow. That's one thing. And it sounds like the most simple thing in the world, but whether it's bow shops that I know really well, like, yeah, it's great when you sell $1,000 bow, but you didn't just make $1,000. You just made $800, or you just made $200 because you got to replace that bow with the $800. It's like you have turnover on your inventory and stuff, but you also have to keep replacing it. So you're only making a small portion, and don't go spend that 800. At the least you have to replace that bow, and whatever it may be. Like have a good game plan and understanding on like how this business is going to flow money through it, how you're going to maintain stock. Where are you going to be given opportunity to improve or change designs or add SKUs or models? All of that became more real in 2016 when things got bigger. It's like, now what do you want to do with the money? How do you improve? How do you scale up? Because it was never going to get anywhere when I was building 100, cow calls at a time. Like I had to figure out how to build 1,000 cow calls and 10,000 cow calls at a time. And then, the scariest thing for me was hiring somebody, and can they do the job as good as I can? I've got to pay them this. They're now my responsibility. All that stuff scared me, but starting up, if it's got a big capital, if it takes a bunch of capital up front, you're gonna have to figure out a way, either through investors, through, pulling your own money out, loans, whatever it may be, to get going.
Yeah. I have kind of middle of the road approach that I've seen work, and I've done it myself, is mostly, and I'm not a big fan of debt, but some debt is okay. Debt to build a business is most of the time just reality. Like it's very rare that you can do what Jason just described. It happens. But a lot of times, especially if you're manufacturing something that's kind of expensive, you have to have cash. And in this industry, like just speaking to this industry specifically, but really any industry where you have a retail component, is you have, let's just say you weave some underwater baskets. You have these baskets, and you're going to make 1,000 of them that you want to sell, and you're going to sell 500 of them to a retailer, and you're going to try to sell the other 500 off your website. Well, let's just say these baskets take the factory, wherever this factory is. You got to pay them at least half up front, and it takes them 6 months to build the baskets. Well, then you got, the baskets are $10,000. Well, now I'm putting $5,000 out 6 months before I even get the inventory. So I'm letting that 5,000 ride with whatever interest rate for 6 months, and then I finally get the inventory, and I can finally ship it to half of it to my dealer, and put half of it on my website. Great. Well, the dealer, when they get that, they're going to throw it on their shelves, their basket shelves, and they're not going to pay you for usually 30, 60, 90, 120 days, especially if you're a new brand. So that gets you another 3, 4, 5 months out on the $5,000 you put out 6 months ago. So the point is, depending on what you're doing, cash is kind of important up front, but there are quite a few things it seems like you can start without a lot of cash. I personally, to start one of my companies, just about anybody can qualify for a $5,000 credit card. And if I had to do that, and I was able to start the company with just that, and basically what I would do is I'd spend it, pay it off, spend it, pay it off, spend it, and kept doing that. And then eventually the cash from the business itself could sustain the business.
Yep. Yeah. And that's a good, a good question to ask yourself. Like, are you confident enough in your design and how you're going to proceed to indebt yourself $5,000, and that's a good spot. Like, how confident are you at that point? Like, you just doing it, you just putting it on the card because you have the availability, or do you truly believe that this is going to, and I'm not going to lie, like I'm a chicken, like I'm so conservative. Like that $5,000 in debt would have scared me. And it's not that I didn't have confidence we would get it back. It's just I didn't like the idea of having it. But I agree with you. If you're at the point and that's your best way to finance and move product and you're confident enough in your idea, then by all means, I would I've been able to see it enough now. The process of ordering, how long it takes to sell it, and as long as you're confident enough in your product and your marketing, then it's probably a good gamble. And like Dave said, at some point you have to have money to start. 99.9% of businesses require some sort of capital to start with.
Yeah, and then you get down the road and you can kind of get it working like Jason did, and now you have a functioning business that's actually turning a profit. The next hard decision you have to make, Jason, and I'm sure you faced this, was, you mean I'm just throwing numbers out there, right? Let's just say your company's profiting $25,000 a year or something. Now I can pay myself another $25,000. Sweet. I'm on top of my state salary. Now I'm rolling, buddy. I can hunt like every Western state. Or do I have to put that back in the company to continue to grow it? Like pulling a dollar out of the company is very attractive because we have to pay ourselves. But if it's a side hustle, it seems like from all these conversations I've had over the years and watching companies, it seems like the best decision is just to keep putting it back in. Speaking of Will Primos, Jason, I had him on the show here a little while ago, and one of the things that I think is interesting about Will is he didn't take a salary for like the first. It was pretty close to 10 years.
Oh, I'm in that same boat. Like I didn't do it until my accountant told me in like 2019, like you need to take a salary for this position, whatever you make it. But same thing. Like I didn't even know that that's what I was supposed to be doing until an accountant told me to do it.
Well, you're very lucky because it's much more attractive once people see money flowing, especially people that don't make a lot of money. I mean, you make a product and all of a sudden a dealer wants to pay you like $30,000 to bring it in their store. That's a lot of money. You're like, sweet, honey, I'm taking you to Fiji,
Yeah.
But someone told me, actually, I think Randy Newberg told me this. He said, he was a CPA for a long time and he talked to a lot of people. And so he has a lot of wisdom. And one of the things he said was, if you have something you're passionate about and that you believe in, and you can bet on yourself, that is the best investment you can make, much beyond a 401k, any retirement account, anything else. If you have a business, he said most of the people with several criteria he mentioned that put $1 back into that business could usually 10x it. So if you think about that, every time you pull $1 out to go, buy a hot tub or put it back in, you can 10x it. It's a pretty easy decision, right?
For sure. Yeah. And like I said, I grew up with, dad, like, hey, what do you put in your 401k every month, trying to like, he knew the way that his dad had taught him how to retire and the way that the world knew how to retire. And I'm like, I want every dollar I have to put back into the company. Like I'd rather roll that than a 401k or stock market or whatnot. And that was just my idea. Like, and early on I could see that, as you'd mentioned, my investment back into the company was making me more money in the end than a stock market ever could, in a lot shorter amount of time. And so that's what I had told Sandy. I didn't want a salary. I wanted to put my entire salary back into the company to design, the next deer call or the next turkey call or whatever it may be, or to order, 200 more units so that we could buy our price down. All of that came in. And the best thing I ever did was reinvest everything I could absolutely afford to do, put it in the company and take out very little. And like I say, I'm not a financial advisor, but you always see the memes. Like if you were to put, $10 a month in blah, 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 starting at the age 20 versus at the age 50, it's that same principle, I think, but you're doing it through your business. So it's still, you just need to put time on it and give it to your business earlier versus then, if you're trying to take half of your profits out, you're just going to definitely slow down, growth and the ability to duplicate it.
Yeah. And especially if you have an idea, if you just put like baseline level of, if you're saying say you're building a product company and in whatever industry, you can do research and find out what multiple of EBITDA companies in that industry are selling for right now. Right. And you can kind of go, okay, so if I grew this to 5 million or 10 million or whatever, and I get lucky, I'm in those 15% of startups that succeed, my company's worth, whatever. My little brother started a tech company. That industry, you can get as much as 15x your top line revenue. Totally different than the hunting industry, but every industry is a little bit different. And you start looking at, I think people fail to look at their business as an investment. I did until I started like learning more and reading more and watching more of these successful people. They're like, and you can be diversified. Like I have a 401k, but I would much rather bet on myself than, or like Social Security. Ugh. I don't even know if it's going to be around when I'm that age. Like it might go bankrupt before then. So I'm like, you know what? I'd rather take $1 and bet on myself. And yeah, I'm going to hit walls, and yes, I'm going to fail. But it's kind of like hunting, dude. Like, hunters are very used to betting on themselves. When you get up in the morning, you're betting on yourself to pick the right spot, to find the right wind, to make a good shot, to be able to recover that animal, to be able to safely get it out. Like it's like one of the most self-reliant things we can do in modern times. So I think sometimes it's a little easier for us to shoulder that burden. It's not to say that it's not scary. It scares the shit out of me all the time. Yeah. And but it is invigorating when you take $1 and put it back in and you see it grow. You're like, ooh, so I could do that again. You're telling me I can make not just cow calls, now I can make bugle tubes. Oh, now you're saying I can make turkey call. Like this is fun.
Yeah. No, it's cool because I've always had this, this idea. I didn't want somebody in a suit in New York at the New York Stock Exchange, like controlling my outcome on this dollar. Like this is completely in my control, and I'm going to work way harder for my return on this dollar than somebody in New York Stock Exchange. Like I'm not going to get screwed by somebody, some game that they're playing, trying to short sell my stock, or, I just felt like I was a puppet in that game. Whereas in like investing in yourself, like your team, your ideas, your motivation, your work ethic is what's going to multiply that money. And I like betting on myself a lot more than some rich guys that don't really care what Jason Phelps makes, across the country.
Yeah. Yeah. What, I don't want to get too much into the hunting tactics and stuff. I know there's a lot of places you've talked about that, and so I bet you're like some people. You probably get tired of talking about that sometimes.
A little bit, yeah. I've liked our I've liked our conversation a lot better than, hey, if this bull's bugling, what would I? Like that. That's my typical podcast.
Yeah. But I'm happy to hear you're still in love with the hunting. I've seen it. I've seen the industry kind of take that magic away, and so that's good. What's the next? Is the next 5 years you hunting more and more? Or you're probably having to pick and choose your hunting.
Yeah, I think with being involved in Meat Eater and being fairly camera facing within the company, there's going to be a lot more, content and more projects coming down the pipeline as we expand our calls. We've got deer stuff coming out this year. So it's like, all right, well, in order to sell a deer call, you should probably go to somewhere where you can call a deer in, and so it's more of, if we have a product to sell and a product to use on camera, then, there's going to be hunts and content attached to that. Mm-hmm. So, I think I'll always be involved with the vision and the brand of Phelps Game Calls from a general manager duty. But I imagine, and the writing's kind of on the wall over the next 5 years, we'll definitely do more content creation around the calls to make sure that we can move them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Where can people follow you, buddy? What's the most exciting places to find you right now?
Oh, I'm definitely not exciting, but if you just need to know the places, we're at Phelps Game Calls on Instagram, Facebook. We're there, both me personally and then Phelps Game Calls Facebook page, and then we just kind of fired up a TikTok. I was the anti-TikToker for a long time, but we've jumped on board.
TikTok. I know a lot of anti-TikTokers, and believe me, I think it's because when it first came out, it was just stupid dances.
Yep.
But I think the TikTok algorithm is way better than Instagram, and I actually my TikTok algorithm is dialed for me, and which is basically like business, outdoors, and music, right?
Yep.
and I watch a lot of comedy on there. I think the impressions and the comedy is like, that's one of my favorite things on TikTok.
Yeah.
Point is, it's not all junky dance. And I think that any company or individual that is looking to social media is totally 100% missing the boat if they're not on TikTok. So congratulations.
Yeah.
But also because Instagram and the Meta, I guess, of Facebook, they've just clamped down so much. It's really hard to make any impact on there. Like,
oh yeah,
it's like a necessary evil, I guess. But it's like one of those things that you start to wonder. It's like, I wonder if we cut this out, period. Like, just cut it off and just focused all on other stuff, if it would make any damn bit of difference, because they've made it so hard to organically grow on there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know. It's frustrating as heck. Like, I've seen whether we've been flagged as a hunting brand or I don't know what did it, but yeah, we were doing better on Instagram 4 years ago than we are now. It's just kind of like, you still have to be there, but our 5th or 6th post that we ever put on TikTok, and I'm not a likes chaser, but I understand probably how it relates back to business a little bit. Man, our 5th or 6th post, I don't remember which one, 70,000 people seen this. Like it had more like the ability to go viral than, and I'm like, well, from a business standpoint, that was a lot less work to get 70,000 eyes on some of our content versus, Instagram. I've got to post 73 times to get that sort of, and so, so it's just a different platform, something that we're not used to. I don't really even know how the heck it understand.
I don't think anybody really knows how to understand it. It's not something that can be understood, but the point is, I heard Gary Vee say, maybe it wasn't him, but the TikTok real estate is still up for grabs. Instagram, like if you don't have a huge following on Instagram, you're gonna have to do something pretty damn remarkable to have any significant growth on there. Otherwise, it's gonna be real slow. I don't know, man. I think that's just the way that everything's going to go, so people can drag their feet. But I remember when people were dragging their feet on Facebook. I remember when people were dragging their feet on Instagram. And now I remember when people were dragging their feet on YouTube. Like, it's just the way the world is going. And if you're in business, you got to remember that. I heard a stat the other day that, because TikTok used to be mostly like teens and preteens and like maybe early 20s. It's not anymore. I mean, yeah, they're there, but it's getting older and older and older. And so if you want to have access to customers of the future, I would think it'd be pretty stupid to not get on there pretty soon. Yeah, no, I agree. So yeah, that's where we're living nowadays. So pretty accessible. Jason Phelps is doing dances on TikTok. No. The nice thing was, is since it's video based, we've got all this video stuff over the last 6 or 7 years. It's super easy. Like, hey, we've already got this. Let's just take a 10-15 second snippet out of there, apply a song that might make sense, or some voiceover, and we've got it post pretty quick. And like I say, they seem to be doing better than our other platforms. So yeah, well, it's an interesting new little venture for us. Well, congrats on all your success, man. And thanks. I think a lot of folks can take inspiration from your story. It's very, very real and relatable to a lot of us. So thanks for sharing it. And yeah, everybody give him a follow, and appreciate you coming on the show today, buddy. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Dave.